Welcome back to my channel. Angular has Null Injector, which can throw an error or return null. Today we are diving into Angular's Null Injector and 4 powerful resolution modifiers: optional, self, SkipSelf, and host. These modifiers control how Angular searches for dependencies, and understanding them helps you write cleaner, more stable code. My name is Maxim Grom. This channel is about web development. Let's get started. From version to version of Angular you have different options. It would be great to check all of them in this video. Before version 14 it's Decorators only. In version 14 InjectFlags were introduced. In version 16 InjectOptions were introduced. In version 18 InjectFlags were deprecated. Very fast, right? InjectOptions are recommended now and InjectFlags are deprecated. Let's start from the most latest flag. I need a service for this lesson. Let's generate it. I would like to have it for showing emoji icon. Now we can try to inject it and see an error because it's not provided. This service is not provided in root. As expected, we see an error. We need inject it with optional modifier to fix this issue. Second parameter is an object with key optional and value true. When I added this optional modifier, no error in console anymore. Because inject function has this optional modifier, we can see that type is different. It's not full service anymore, it's full service or null. So we should be careful during rendering this value. I'm using optional reading to avoid mistakes if full service is null. And you see, result is like emoji NA. In our case, we have a very simple value. It's like an object with only one property, so we can make a default value for it. And now I see Fox. Fox is a default value. I added it through the operator OR. What's about InjectFlags? Let's demonstrate how to work with InjectFlags. I will inject the same service as different property. InjectFlags is an num. Very simple, I just put this value as a second parameter. And let's render it now. It behaves the same, but it's more complex and harder for newcomers to understand. When we add second flag, everything will be clear to you. Now let's switch to constructor-based injection. Angular provides decorators for each resolution modifier: optional, self, SkipSelf, host. With optional you must also update the type to allow null, and optionally add a fallback default in the constructor. I made a mistake, this value is not mandatory, I have to add a null as possible value. And to have default value, I can use this pattern in constructor. Let's verify. Now it works for all three values. All three approaches, InjectOptions, flags, and decorators, can handle optional injection. It's very useful for libraries when we should make as stable code as possible. Now let's explore self modifier. This modifier restricts Angular to resolving dependencies only from the current injector. For components, it checks both view element injector and component element injector. For directives, it limits lookup to the directives host. Let's test it with a parent-child component setup. I need a parent component and I need a child component. Parent component will render app-child. The child component tries to inject a service using self. And of course we need to render parent component at app component. No emoji icon has been rendered. We need to provide some. Let's do it in a parent first and verify that it will return null. I want to have fish in the parent component level. Result is null, maybe we can provide on view level. I added spider on view level. Spider is also not rendered. Let's provide something on child component level. I provided a monkey on component element level. And I see monkey in the browser. Let's add view provider with the lion. And it works because view provider is stronger than provider. So self flag make Angular read view element provider and then go to the component element provider. Let's confirm it with a directive that provides a new value. The purpose of directive will be to provide a fox. Let's add fox directive to a child tag element. I need to jump to parent component, import fox directive, and then add app fox to the app child. Angular will merge providers from component and directives. Directives provider overrides the components provider. Exception is a host directive, it will be overridden by component. If we check now, we see lion because view provider is stronger than host provider. I need to comment it out first. And now we see fox as a result value. You see that self modifier limits resolution path by view provider and element provider. And element provider can be extended by directives. Next up, SkipSelf. Let's update option. Self is going to be false. And SkipSelf is going to be true. This tells Angular to ignore the current injector and look in the parent injector instead. With this flag I see a spider. Spider is a view provider of parent component. Interesting moment that we can put provider on any HTML element between parent and child to override parent providers for the child. We already have the fox directive to play with it. Let's move it to p tag. If we wrap component with some tag and provide something different, it will be injected. Good to know that component is a directive with view. If component is a wrapper, it can override providers as well as directive did in this example. Let me show you with wrapper component. Component has a provider with two frogs. View provider will not work because content not related to this view. I explained it in previous video. Let's wrap the child component in a parent component. And let's verify. I see double frogs on the screen. This makes Angular incredibly flexible. Let's talk about host modifier. The host modifier limits the search to the host view and the parent component's view. Angular stops looking once it leaves this zone. Let's test it. I see a lion. Let's comment out the lion provider. I see the monkey. Let's comment out it. I see a double frog. Let's comment it out. If I add a fox on AppChild tag, I see the fox. Let's remove it. I see a spider. It comes from host view provider. What if I comment out it? Null is a new result. No fish there. Host option commands Angular to stop searching on the host view level or on parent component view level. The host modifier is especially useful for building flexible libraries with predictable behavior. We now have 4 options and 3 different ways to use them. First is InjectOptions in the inject function. Second is constructor decorator, optional. Third one is InjectFlags, which is deprecated. Now let me show the second and third with multiple modifiers. Constructor decorator are simple. You can add as many as you need decorators on the property. Of course, 4 decorators at once do not make any sense from logic perspective. It will be null all the time. What about InjectFlags? Note, InjectFlags only accept one value, but you can combine multiple flags using binary OR. Let me show how. This approach is not common for JavaScript developers and might create confusions and bugs, because binary OR is used instead of logical OR. How it works? If we jump to the definition of an app, we can find that. Each flag has a binary representation. Binary OR will combine them into result value. For instance, this is a result value of combining all of them. With programming of microcontrollers, it would be your main approach to save register flags. But with JavaScript, it's too complicated. That's why Angular has removed toward InjectOptions instead. Here is a quick recap. I recommend migrating projects to Angular 16 or higher and switching to InjectOptions instead of InjectFlags or Decorators. Angular has 4 resolution modifiers. Optional to return null instead of error if no providers has been found. Self to ask Angular inject dependency from the place where it requested and jump to the null injector if it's not provided. In case if we are talking about component, it has 2 injectors, view injector and component element injector, or view providers and providers. SkipSelf works in opposite way, skipping self providers and continue searching in the tree as usual. And the last interesting flag is host. It limits search path by self and parent component till view provider of parent. Angular's dependency injection system is powerful and flexible, but it can be tricky without a solid understanding of these resolution modifiers. I'd love to hear about your experience with these flags in the comments. Thank you for watching. I hope you found this video helpful and informative. See you in the next one. Bye.